The Galactic Military Academy of Veros Prime had trained 10,000 species across 4 centuries. Its halls had seen Kroth warriors, Silurian telepaths, and crystalline Zovek soldiers pass through its gates. But nothing had prepared Cadet Arya for the moment she accidentally brushed her fingers against Dylan's arm. The mess hall went silent. Not gradually, not politely. Instantly, completely, terrifyingly silent. Arya was a Silurian, tall, silver-skinned, her 4 fingers precise and delicate as surgical instruments. She had graduated top of her homeworld's academy before earning a placement at Veros Prime. She was not easily rattled. But she had just touched a human. Specifically, she had touched the raised, discolored tissue running from Dylan's left wrist to his elbow, a jagged, pale river of scar tissue that caught the light like a topographic map of some violent landscape. Dylan didn't flinch. He just looked down at her hand, then up at her face, his expression entirely unreadable. "Sorry," Arya said quickly, pulling her hand back. "I didn't mean to. I wasn't looking where I was reaching for the salt." "It's fine," Dylan said simply. He picked up the salt and handed it to her. But the rest of the cadets at the surrounding tables were still frozen. 47 beings from 23 different species, all staring at the human as if they had just witnessed something that defied the known laws of physics. Cadet Joe, a Thranosai, broad-chested with bioluminescent stripes across his neck, finally broke the silence. His voice came out smaller than usual. "Dylan," Joe said carefully. "What is that?" Dylan glanced at his arm. "Scar." "From what?" A pause. Dylan chewed his food thoughtfully. "A few things." Joe exchanged a look with the Mavari cadet beside him. "Me," short for Mavaris, 7, a drone-linked being who communicated in synchronized whispers between its 2 connected bodies. Both of Me's heads turned simultaneously toward Dylan. "Human Scar?" Me asked, both mouths speaking in unison. "Yeah," Dylan said. "Skin gets damaged badly enough, it heals differently. Leaves a mark." But Arya set down the salt. She couldn't help it. The academic part of her brain had completely taken over. But humans have cellular regeneration capabilities. Your biology can repair damaged tissue cleanly. We've studied it in xenobiology class. Your healing factor is slower than the scarring process, sometimes, Dylan said with a slight shrug. If the wound is bad enough, deep enough, fast enough, the body just patches it and moves on. Does the best it can. Another long silence. New York, a cadet from the insectoid Hierothai species, her compound eyes blinking in unsettled sequence, leaned forward from 3 seats down. "How many do you have?" Dylan looked up. "Scars?" "Yes." He considered the question as if he were being asked something entirely mundane, like the distance to the nearest star system. Counted them once. Stopped at around 40. Gave up after that. The mess hall did not recover its noise. It was Cadet High who finally asked the question that everyone else was dancing around. High was Dioran, a species that had not known warfare for over 800 years. Their planet had achieved something the rest of the galaxy quietly envied: genuine, lasting peace. High was brilliant, gentle, and had joined the academy not to fight, but to learn diplomacy and interspecies relations. He had never quite understood why the rest of the galaxy still maintained militaries. Looking at Dylan's arm, he was beginning to understand. Were those from battle?" High asked. Dylan tilted his head slightly. "Some. Yeah. You were in combat? Before the academy? Border Patrol unit. 18 months. Before that, civilian incident." Dylan's jaw tightened slightly, the only crack in his composure. "Before that, just being young and stupid." High stared at the human's arm for a long moment. Then, very quietly, "Does it hurt?" "Not anymore." Did it hurt when it happened?" Dylan met High's eyes. The Dioran flinched at whatever he saw there, though Dylan's expression had not changed at all. "Yes," Dylan said simply. "It did." "Wah." The cadet who usually had the loudest opinions about everything had not spoken in nearly 4 minutes. This was unprecedented. Finally, was set down his food implement. Valori did not use utensils. They heated food with their touch, and said, "I don't understand humans." Dylan raised an eyebrow. "Yeah. You remember pain," was said, with a kind of bewildered reverence. "My species, when we are injured, our neurochemistry immediately suppresses the memory of the specific sensation. We remember the injury occurred. We do not remember how it felt. It is a biological mercy. He paused. You have no such mercy. No, Dylan agreed. And yet you. Wood gestured vaguely at Dylan's arm, at his whole existence. You continue. Yeah, that's. Was seemed to be struggling with a concept that his language may not have had a word for. That is either incredibly brave or incredibly strange. Probably both, Dylan said. He almost smiled. Arya was still watching the human. Her academic mind had shifted into a different mode now. Not the cold cataloging of xenobiology, but something more personal. Something that felt, uncomfortably, like awe. She had studied human history at the academy. Mandatory course for all cadets, species assessments, the founding members of the Galactic Accord. Humans had been the 7th species to join the Accord, and the first to join without being invited. They had simply shown up at the border station, handed over their credentials, and said, "We'd like to be part of this, please." The Accord had deliberated for 6 months. Humans were a young species, barely 2,000 years removed from their first interstellar flight. They had a complicated history, a violent history, if the records were honest about it. Wars across their own planet, resource conflicts, ideological battles that had nearly ended their civilization twice. But they had survived all of it. Every war, every famine, every extinction-level event their own solar system had thrown at them, an ice age, a supervolcanic period, an asteroid impact that had reshaped their northern continent. They had buried their dead, remembered their pain, and kept going. The Accord had ultimately voted them in unanimously. Looking at Dylan's arm, Arya thought she finally understood why. "Can I ask you something?" she said. Dylan glanced at her. "You already touched my scar. I think asking is fine. Does it bother you that we're looking at it like this? Like it's something strange?" Dylan considered the question honestly. That was something Arya had noticed about him in the months they'd been at the academy together. He didn't perform emotions. When he was thinking, he looked like he was thinking. Nothing more. "No," he said finally. "It is strange. To you. That's fair. It isn't strange to you. It's just part of what happened. Part of where I've been." He glanced down at the scar, then back at her. "Back home, we say scars are a record. They're not something to be ashamed of or proud of exactly. They're just proof you were there. That something happened, and you came through it." Arya looked at the pale river of healed tissue on his arm. "Proof you were there. That something happened, and you came through it." She thought about human history. The wars they'd fought not just against each other, but against their own planet, their own biology, their own worst impulses. The endless, grinding, painful, human process of becoming something better than they had been. And then she looked around the table, at Joe and me, and New York, and Hi, and Wah, all of them watching Dylan with that same complicated expression. Not quite fear, not quite awe. Something that was both and more. It was Hi who spoke last, before the mess hall finally recovered its noise and its movement and its ordinary chaos. "Dylan," the Dioran said softly, "on my world, we have a saying. The one who has never fallen cannot teach you how to rise." Dylan looked at him. "I think," Hi continued carefully, "that your people have fallen many times." "Yeah," Dylan said. "We have. And yet you are here." Dylan picked up his fork again. He looked at his arm, that pale, quiet record of everything he'd survived. And then he looked out at the 50 cadets from 23 species, all of them watching him with something they couldn't quite name. "Yeah," he said simply. "We are."